Welcome to Permission to Thrive. I'm your host, Suzi Lula. As a spiritual therapist for over 20 years, I have the honor and privilege of ushering women and mothers just like you on a journey from simply surviving to powerfully thriving. I also have the honor of raising our son, Will, who is now a young adult, with my longtime partner, Jamie, so I'm right there on the journey with you. Consider this your personal sanctuary, your space to meet your heart, embrace your messy, and come home to your most authentic, extraordinary self. My hope is that you leave resourced and inspired because you are here to shine. Welcome to Permission to Thrive. Welcome everyone to today's episode of Permission to Thrive. Today we are all about relationships, and we are all in relationships with ourselves and others all of the time. So I think today's episode is going to be particularly relevant to all of you. And I'm coming to you with two amazing questions about relationships from listeners. So you, the listeners, have inspired this episode. I love reading your emails. I love reading your questions. And so today I'm going to be answering these two amazing questions. They were so intricately related because although these two individuals don't know each other, both questions happen to be about relationships. And as I said, we are always in relationships with ourselves and others all of the time. So these two questions perfectly complemented each other. And so I thought that I would just dive in to all things relationships, how to choose them, how to know when to stay in them, how to navigate them. This is what is at the heart and the center of our time together today. So sit back, relax, maybe get a cup of tea, maybe put on your earplugs if you're going for a walk, a run, a workout, and allow yourself to receive as much wisdom as you possibly can from these two amazing questions, these two wonderful listeners, and then the way that I am choosing to respond. It is through relationships that we can either feel honored and expansive, or we can feel dimmed and constrictive. And so today's conversation is here to provide you with as much wisdom around expanding yourself through relationships as you possibly can. So I'm going to read both of these two questions, and then I'm going to dive in to my responses. So Megan, who's 33, writes, "My name is Megan. I'm 33 years old and single. I'm happy being alone, but I'm not opposed to being with a partner if it's the right fit. I just don't know how I feel about the idea of marriage, especially since there's a 50% divorce rate. So my question to you is this: as someone who is married yourself, how do you view the concept of marriage, and how do you see it fit into the scope of your spiritual journey?" How much do I love this question? And as I said, I received another question that I'm going to pair up with your question, Megan, because they are so complementary. So I'm going to read the next question, and then I'm going to weave the two responses together. So here's another question from Keegan, 25. "Hi, Suzi. I'm Keegan. I'm 25 years old, and I haven't been in a serious relationship yet, but I feel like I'm in a place where I want to start looking for one. A lot of my friends believe in soulmates, but a good amount of them are starting to think that's a thing that capitalism is just selling to us. My question for you is this: do you believe in soulmates? If not, what is your take on how to know if someone is the right choice for you?" I love that you are 25, Keegan, and just asking this question already, especially the part about how to know if someone is the right fit for you. Choosing a partner is one of the most important decisions we will ever make in this life. And the fact that we don't talk about it is such a loss for us as a culture. So I love these questions about how to choose a partnership, how to know when one is complete, what to do if we're feeling like one is complete, how to navigate. So I'm going to go back through the main questions that I'm hearing from each of you, Megan and Keegan, and then I'll respond. So the questions I think I'm hearing are, do I believe in soulmates? Why and why not? How do I view the concept of marriage, especially in the context that over 50% of marriages end in divorce? And how do I reconcile that with a spiritual journey? And how to know if someone is right for you. And I will elaborate on that, how to continue to grow with someone for those of you who are already in relationships, how to navigate relationships, how to know when we are complete with a relationship. So all things relationships we're going to dive into. So soulmates. Yes, I believe in soulmates, but not in the way that you're probably asking, you've probably heard, and certainly not from the place that society speaks of them. Society leads us to believe that there is one special person for us that will complete us, that we need to find in order to be happy, that someone else has that power to make us happy, to complete us. It sets us up to believe that until and unless we find that one special individual, that we are not enough, that we are not enough on our own, and also that there's only one person out there. It sets us up to be in a consciousness of lack. So already, no matter who we find and how amazing they are, we will fail because no one and nothing outside of ourselves can make us enough, can make us okay. That is something that we must find, we must uncover, we must discover, we must connect to within ourselves, our own sense of enoughness, our own sense of our worth and our abundance and our divinity, our purpose. And I believe that we are all souls. Every single one of us is a soul having this human experience or on this human journey. If you think about yourself, at one point, there was a point before you were born. You didn't have a body, and then you chose to be born onto this earth. There is going to be a moment when we are each and all going to pass on. We are going to drop this body, release this body, and we are going to move on. The times before we pick up the body and the times after we drop the body, it's pretty evident to see that we are souls because we have no body. When we are on this particular part of our journey, this particular part where we're on this earth plane, this physical plane, we forget that we are souls having a human experience, souls in a body, taking on a body, because we are so taught to look externally. So we see our body and we think we are our body. We see other people's bodies and we think we are the body. And we have been taught in culture to completely forget and negate that we are actually a soul, a spirit, a being that is part of us is human, and we are transcendent of our human self. So yes, we are souls. And so yes, I believe in soul mates, but I believe that we are each and all soulmates to each other. So if I'm a soul and you listening, you are a soul, we are mates to each other. We are walking with each other on this journey that we call life, on this physical plane. So I don't believe in one soulmate, and I certainly don't believe that a soulmate is only referenced as a romantic partner. I believe that you listeners, you who are listening to me right now, and I to you, we are soul mates. We're meeting at the level of the soul. We're meeting also at the human level, and we're walking with each other on this journey. You're my mate. You're my partner. And I believe that to set us up to say that there is only one soulmate, and that soulmate would be a romantic partner, is to reduce this abundant universe into a sense of lack. And there is no lack in an abundant universe. So I'm going to say that again. There is no lack in an abundant universe. So an abundant universe would not set us up to have only one soulmate and have that soulmate be a romantic partner. But I know that the question is coming because culture does indoctrinate us to think that a soulmate is a romantic partner and that there is only this one person. But the potential here is incredible when you believe that soulmates balance out all inequities. If you are my soulmate, I am your soulmate, it means that we are two equal souls walking on earth. So it makes me not more anything than you. It makes a parent not more anything than a child. It makes the government not more of an authority than us sitting at home. It creates equality for all of us. And we have certainly been taught that a government, for instance, is more powerful, for example, than someone sitting in their home office. We have been taught that a parent is more powerful than a child. We have been taught so many myths and inaccuracies about ourselves as souls. We are all equal souls. I can receive so much wisdom from a 10-year-old. I can receive so much wisdom from an 80-year-old. An 80-year-old can receive so much wisdom from me. I've already received so much wisdom from Megan and Keegan just asking these questions. So we are each and all here to learn from each other, to receive from each other, to grow from each other. And the universe would not have us set up to be limited to whom we can learn and grow from. So I believe that seeing us all as souls, all as soul partnerships, just expands our lives. It allows me to use even the most seemingly negative situations to grow and expand and transform from in my life, because we are each and all souls learning, doing the best we can, learning from each other, giving to each other, receiving from each other. Now, how do I view the concept of marriage? Both because there is over 50% divorce rate in our country, but also because of the implication from the question that there is this one soulmate and that we're supposed to be looking for this person to then marry this person. So how do I view the concept of marriage in these two contexts? So this is another great question. So I'm going to start by saying the best definition of the word, the concept of marriage, to me that I've ever heard is by Gary Zukov. He wrote it in the book called The Seat of the Soul for anyone interested. Fantastic book. He says that marriage is a spiritual partnership between two equals for the purpose of spiritual growth. So I'm going to say that again. He says that marriage is a spiritual partnership between two equals for the purpose of spiritual growth. So there's three important elements here. There's the element of partnership, which says we are all equal. Spiritual growth, meaning that this is not necessarily a legal binding agreement as it has become in culture. There can be that element, but the true definition of marriage is a fusion, a bringing together of two individuals in a partnership, in an equal partnership, where each of us, both of us, are going to grow and expand and transform and heal. This is the exciting part about a spiritual partnership. So I refer, yes, I am legally married, but I really refer to my quote marriage. I refer to Jamie as my partner, my spiritual partner. I'm in a spiritual partnership. And I don't even know if I would legally get married again if I had to do it again. I've been together with Jamie for 26 years now. I was a different person when I entered into that quote legal agreement, and it had a lot to do with children. And what is important to me and has always been important to me was the idea of spiritual partnership. I read that book before I got married, and I brought the idea of spiritual partnership into my relationship. So culture's view of marriage comes from a legal binding agreement. And it really had started around land and money and acquisitions, originally intended to ensure the safety of women, or one might say the buying of women, the selling of women, but it really had nothing to do back in the day with spiritual partnerships. Now, we are each and all here to evolve, and culture is here to evolve. So I certainly hope that through this question and through each and all of you, whether you are already married, whether you are in a relationship, to consider the idea of a spiritual partnership. That is how we will individually and collectively evolve our culture's idea of what it is like to be in a long-term, quote, marriage, or a long-term relationship, a long-term partnership. So if you take away nothing else from today, perhaps begin to replace the word relationship with the word partnership. What if you thought of every one of your relationships as a partnership? For those of you who are parents, what if you began to think about your relationship with your child as a partnership? Think of your relationship with your parents as a partnership, with your friends as a partnership. How would we expand if we began to think of our relationships as more of a partnership? Because relationships can include a lot of the older, antiquated ideas, inequality, someone's superior, someone's inferior, someone has more of the power, someone has less of the power. Whereas when you think of partnerships, you think of two equals coming together. So two equals coming together, and the last part of his definition is for the purpose of spiritual growth. Now, if you believe that we are all souls here walking on earth, you will probably also agree that we are all here to heal. We are all here to transform. We are all here to expand. We're here to live our most thriving life, our richest life. We have this one life. So let us make it rich. Let us be wealthy in this life. And by wealthy, I don't necessarily mean only money. I mean true wealth, the richness, the quality of life, the quality of our relationships, the quality of our partnerships. So before we go on, let's just take one moment. If you're in a space and in a place where you can close your eyes, maybe place your hand over your heart, and just begin to call in the different, quote, relationships you are in your life. Perhaps you're in a relationship with one or both of your parents, friendships, children, thinking about relationships, spouses, marriages. Yes, marriages. I want you to close your eyes and begin to think, what if I envisioned, I encapsulated this more as a partnership rather than simply a relationship? How would my relationship with my child be transformed if I thought about us solely as a partnership? How would my relationships with my students, if I'm a teacher, with my parents, how would it transform and shift and change and evolve and grow and transform if I looked at this relationship as a partnership? It really invites equality, especially where marriages and long-term relationships are concerned. Culture definitely tells us that it's better if we stay together, worse if we separate. And I like to use the word complete. And when you think of yourself being in a spiritual partnership rather than a marriage, we can then choose to either stay in the relationship or complete the relationship. We are more free to choose to complete a relationship, to perhaps grow in a different direction and in a different way. So another reason why I like to use the term spiritual partnership or simply partnership. That leads me to the third question, which is such an important question. I love this question. How do we know when someone is right for us? How do we know when someone is right for us? And that can be a question. In this case, with Megan and Keegan, they're asking this question from the place of someone single, thinking about being in a relationship. How do we know if someone is right for us? I can ask that question and do ask that question of myself and Jamie, and we've been together 26 years. And I believe it's a very important question to ask ourselves whether we're single, seeking to be in a relationship, whether we've been in a relationship for 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years, or 26 years, 36 years. Is this individual right for me? Am I right for them? Am I a good fit for them? Am I complete? Do I still have more to learn and to grow? So this is such an important question. And as we've been saying so far, there is no right person. There is no one right person. When we think of ourselves as souls on a journey, we are going to learn from all those around us. It becomes a question of choice. Do I want to learn from this particular individual in front of me? Is this the individual and the way that I am seeking to learn? How to choose a partner, though, is an amazing question. How to choose friendships, how to surround ourselves with the people who are additive to our lives, bring out the best in us, compliment us, support us, believe in us, cheer us on. This is a question that is sorely missing from our culture. My mom, my parents never talked to me about how in the heck to choose a partner, how in the heck to navigate said partnership, and certainly how to determine whether I was complete with the partnership. We aren't taught that. I have a son in college, Will, and I've hopefully over the years, it's definitely on my radar. It's on the front burner to speak to him, to talk to him, to have conversations with him about how to choose friends. How to choose friends ultimately one day probably becomes how to choose a partner. And so this question of how to choose friends, how to choose a job, how to choose that which we want to be surrounded by is a very important and definitely overlooked question. And so let's dive in. And this question is relevant to you, whether you've been with somebody 26 years, as have I, or whether you are just deciding how in the world do I choose someone who complements me, who is a good fit for where I am right now in my life. So I'm going to go through some of the things both in my own personal life, but also, I have worked for almost 25 years with couples day in and day out. So I learned some things about being in successful, effective partnerships. So I'm going to share with you some of the probably top 5, 6 things that are important to look for when you are choosing a partner, when you are evaluating your own partnership. And the first most important question to ask yourself, what are the qualities that are important to you in your life? What are the values that are important to you in your life? Jot down that question, Megan and Keegan and everyone listening. What are the qualities? What are the values that are important to you in your life? Now, up until now, we have been taught to make a list of the qualities that are important to us in the other person. And what does that do? It sets us up to be externally oriented in our partnership. Then we are taught, make a list of what we want in the other person. And then that sets us up throughout the course of our relationship to continue to look at the other person to see if they are fulfilling our list, our needs. So I'm offering the opposite. Write down a list of qualities and values that are important to you in your life, that you want to live in your life, whether you're in a relationship, not in a relationship. So let's just start there. What is important to you? What do you value in your life? Right now, while you're listening, even if you don't have a journal, just 3 qualities that are important to you. Keep your list short. I have probably 3 or 4 qualities. That's it. But they are so important to me. And I will be living them, whether I am continuing in my relationship with Jamie, whether I'm alone. I was living them before I met him. They are non-negotiable to me. So the things that are important to me, for instance, my spiritual path. My spiritual path is the single most important quality and value I have in my life. That may be different for yours. I'm just using mine as an example. But my spiritual growth, transformation, healing, Healing is my highest value. Expansion, my highest value. So whether it is with my friends, someone I think about being in a relationship, anyone I surround myself with, spiritual growth, transformation, healing, expansion, that's the quality that's most important to me. So I surround myself with individuals who are also interested in that quality. So my girlfriends, my Instagram feed, my students, my clients, my husband, we are each and all, to some degree and in some way, shape, or form, interested in growth, expansion, transformation, living our best life, thriving, living a rich, wealthy life. So I surround myself with what is most important to me, and that is in my friendships, and that is in my husband. So begin to ask what is important to you. The other thing that was important to me, connection, intimacy. While I'm on earth, I want to be as connected as I possibly can, be as intimate as I possibly can. And that is with Jamie, with Will, my son, and also with every single one of you who's listening. I love getting your emails. I love connecting with you. I want to go deep. That's why I love the podcast format. It's a long format that allows us to go more deeply than I can scrolling Instagram. So I love each one of you. I love when every one of you writes back to me. I love reading the reviews that you so graciously and generously leave for me. I'm interested in connection. I'm interested in intimacy. And so someone who is also interested in connection and intimacy, you're going to be my people. So I'm looking for that. I'm looking for individuals who take personal responsibility for their life. Why? Because that is a value that's important to me. I take personal responsibility for my life. Sometimes I take over responsibility. It's something I work with in my life. But I know that I clean up my side of the street. I know that I will take responsibility for my side of the street. I know that I am going to be doing that, whether you are listening, whether you're not listening, whether someone's my friend or they're not my friend, whether Jamie is in my life or he's not in my life. That is something that I am devoted to. I am committed to. So really, these are my highest three force: my spiritual growth, connection and intimacy, personal responsibility, and then a sense of purpose. Being here for something, to be used in service, to be used, to be a vessel, to be a channel for good in the world, to share what I've learned, to have a higher purpose, to live out a life of meaning and purpose, inspiration, potential, thriving, wealth. That is probably equally important. And that's a short list. This is a short list of things. But when I met Jamie, I saw these values in him as well. And it wasn't because I had made a list looking for them in someone else. It was that I was fulfilled. I was satisfied. I was invested in these 4, 5, 6 qualities. And so I recognized them when I saw them in someone else. I'm so grateful to say almost every one of my clients, to the person, in 25 years, is a delight because they're also interested in these same qualities. My girlfriends, I have amazing girlfriends because we're all interested in the same thing. It doesn't mean that we are replicas of each other. It doesn't mean that we're clones of each other. I'm going to be talking about complementary values in a moment. But it means that when you are dedicated and committed to living your own values, when you're clear about your own values, and then you're dedicated and committed to living out the things that you value, you will more easily see it and recognize it when you happen upon it in someone else. And I did. I saw it in Jamie when I first met him, and it was attractive to me. And so I knew, especially because he was also interested in personal growth and he took personal responsibility, that he was someone I chose to invest my time with. Now, we were friends for a long time before we started going out. I highly recommend that. And I'm going to be talking about that in a moment. But for now, I'm going to move on to the second points. So the first point is to be aware of the qualities and values in your life that are important to you and dedicate and commit yourself to living out those values. So the second point, which might be considered redundant, but I think it's so important, I'm going to say it again, that you are the one that's practicing what you want from another person in your own life, and you are committed to doing so with or without said person. So I was already on my path. I was already aware of what I valued. I was already devoted and committed to these values before I met Jamie. And then if we aren't together tomorrow, I will continue to be devoted and true to that which is important to me. He complements who I already am. My friends complement who I already am. So now, the third point, which I referenced, friendship. To be in like to me is much more effective than being in love. So I highly recommend, I've seen it person after person, couple after couple, year after year. When you can make being in like, when you value your friendship more than the fantasy of the romance, then the romance can grow out of your friendship. Why? Because when you like being around someone, when you trust them, when you value them, when you're interested in them, when they're interested in you, when a friendship is real and rich, it has the potential to blossom into love. Blossom, there can be an attraction, a physical, sexual attraction that comes out of liking the other person. What I can tell you in working with so many clients over the years, when the sexual chemistry fades, it is most often because the friendship was either not there to begin with or it too has faded. Because when you don't like the person that you are with, you are not going to want to open yourself up into a sexually connected relationship. You need to like, to feel safe, to trust the person that you are going to be romantically and intimately, sexually involved with. So from the beginning, I sincerely liked being with Jamie. I liked the kind of person he was. I liked his character. I liked him. I remember from the very beginning, I had adopted a daughter, CJ. She was 14 at the time. And I remember when he would call me or we'd make plans, he would always include CJ. He'd always ask about her, and not just how was CJ doing. He would remember, how did she do on her algebra test? Did she study for her algebra test? How is her friendship going with Karen? He remembered the details. He was interested in the details. He was sincerely interested in her. He was sincerely interested in me. And from the beginning, that was important to me. He's a nurturing presence. When I would bring something to him, when I was upset about something, he had a capacity to reside in his heart, to nurture, to be nurturing. Now, these aren't the things that might be high on your list, but I knew that they were high on my list because they were things that I longed for from my childhood. They were things that were missing for me from my childhood. So I was working on providing them for myself, fulfilling my own unmet childhood needs. And then when I saw that someone else had the qualities and the characteristics that were missing from me when I was young, I was attracted to that. We built a friendship. Those were the qualities that I saw in him and his character, and I appreciated his character. And there were things, of course, like we both loved music, we're both artists, spiritual growth, expansion, transformation. So we had so much in common, from the artistic, the creative, the inspirational aspects, to the spiritual, to fun. He's just so playful. He loves having a good time. He could make me laugh. There were just so many things We both had similar financial values. Talking about finance is something that is a non-negotiable. It's imperative. Become your own best financial steward, the best steward of your finances you can possibly be. And then meet someone who is also interested in being a great steward of their finances. Talk about finances. Talk about the things that are important to you. And that leads me to the next point, is that you're going to heal with this person. If you're in a long-term relationship with someone, things are going to come up. So I can remember pretty early on, it had been like easily a year or two, and Jamie and I just really hadn't gotten into conflicts. We just hadn't. We were very complimentary of each other. And I remember asking him, how do you do conflict? How you do conflict is important to me. I need to know, are you the kind of person? Do you hit below the belt? Do you avoid conflict? Do you bully? Are you interested in healthy conflict? Are you interested in learning how to navigate things that are uncomfortable? How do you handle things that are uncomfortable? Look at the other person and look and observe, how do they handle conflict in the other areas of their life? How do they handle conflict with their family of origin? How do they handle adversity? These are important questions to be asking a significant other, or to be looking at both in yourself and someone that you potentially might be looking at as a possible partner. And if you are in a long-term relationship, revamping, renegotiating, relearning. I have an online course that I highly recommend to everyone. It's called From Conflict to Connection. And I really untangle all of the mythology around conflicts and how we're taught to avoid conflicts at all costs. Conflict is a natural part of the human experience. I want something, you want something different. We are indoctrinated into a consciousness of lack. So we're going to think it's an either or. Either I get my needs met or you get your needs met. And if we stay in lack, we're going to have a power struggle. I'm going to think that it's not possible to have my needs met and your needs met. And especially for any of you parents out there, because parenting is mired in a consciousness of lack. There isn't enough time. There isn't enough support. There isn't enough, isn't enough finance, isn't enough. And so we can so unconsciously move into a consciousness of lack and end up in conflict. And so to renegotiate conflict, to really consider, how do we handle conflict? How do we handle adversity? How do we create resilience within us? How do we navigate conflict in a nonviolent, communicative, expansive, inspired way? So how we learn to heal with each other, how we learn to handle conflict, imperative in the answer to this question. And we want to be willing. In fact, I was excited to talk to Jamie about that. It was important to me. I leaned into it. I wanted to know. I didn't want to get down the line and start having conflicts and not know how to handle it together. And at least if we didn't know how to handle it together, which neither of us did, we each came from pretty dysfunctional backgrounds. It's pretty much going to be the case with most individuals, because in our culture, we don't know how to handle conflict. So chances are you don't really know how to navigate conflict in a very effective way. And the person you attract may not be very knowledgeable and practiced in handling conflict in a communicative way. So it's probably going to be something you're going to learn to navigate together. But being on the same page about wanting to learn how to explore that as partners, as equals, is imperative. It's so non-negotiable. It's so important. Please, please do yourself a favor. Talk about how to handle conflict, either before you get in a relationship, or if you've been in a relationship for 20 years, go to your partner. Say, I'd really like to really do some exploring around how we could better handle conflict in our relationship, in our family. Go get my online course. I promise you, it will be a game changer. And so we're going to be healing together. And this last point is that we also have the potential to grow together, to expand together, to be complementary to each other. So Jamie and I are not mirror images of each other. My friends aren't mirror images. They bring qualities and characteristics and values and interests that weren't necessarily mine. And so they bring that into my world. I bring things into their world. And what happens is we become greater than the sum of our parts. Another takeaway, jot that down. Does someone else in your life make you feel expansive and greater than the sum of your parts? What does that mean, and why is that important? It means that if I bring all of myself to this relationship and you bring all of yourself to this relationship, there's a third entity that gets formed. So there's the entity of myself that I bring. There's the entity of yourself that you bring. And now coming together, there's a third entity, a third energy of who are we together. When I bring appreciation and acknowledgement and gratitude for who you are, and you bring that for who I am, and I open to your world and you open to my world, we become greater together than we were individually before. That is the same with us in our relationship in this podcast. I'm greater because I've met some of you. I'm greater because I read your reviews. I'm greater because some of you take the time to email me and share with me some of your takeaways, your questions, like we're doing today. When I read your reviews and you've taken the time to share with me, and then hopefully I've taken the time to infuse this with the best of myself, then something, a third entity, a third energy is created. And when you create that with someone, it is beyond anything that your mind could conjure up. That's why I say don't waste your time with a list, because what we have together and what you have together when you enter into true partnerships with equals for the sake of your growth, for the purpose of your growth, what happens? You are born into, you are birthed into a third energy. And that is greater together than who you are individually. And that growth, that expansion, that thriving, that wealth, and I mean that even through the hard times and the dark times, of which there will be many. That is part of relationships. It's part of partnerships, is learning to grow through those. But I can tell you, I wouldn't trade one conflict, one navigation, one area, one issue that Jamie and I have grown through. I wouldn't trade one of it, because it's made us into this third entity, this third energy that is more expansive than I was before I met him. Now, I want to say one more thing, is when to know to complete a relationship. And I'm going to do an entire episode on that. But what I can say right now, and what I will leave you with in short, because we're close to the end of this particular episode, is allow yourself to even bring the word complete into your vocabulary, into your consciousness, rather than end. Nothing really ends. We're all continually growing and evolving and navigating our own journeys. And we can be complete. I can be complete with doing a podcast maybe one day. I can be complete with a certain friendship one day. Sometimes I can be complete with an area of my life, an issue in my life. And so the word completion brings dignity and choice to something that we have been very misinformed about. There's a season for everything, and some things complete. And I want you to give yourself that permission to at least explore that. And I will do its own episode because it's layered, very layered. So in closing, I first want to thank you, Megan. Thank you, Keegan. These were amazing questions. I hope that you have each and all of you listening have received so much from simply exploring these questions that do not get asked in culture. And as an assignment, as a takeaway, contemplate, become reflective. What are the values that are important to you in your life? And then take the focus off of the other person or potential other person and make a U-turn, as my friend Devin says. Make a U-turn and look at yourself. What do you need in your life? How could you best support yourself to begin to be true to the qualities and the values that are important to you? Because one thing I can promise you is that the more true you are to those values in your life, the more that all of your partnerships will thrive. So thank you. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Keegan. Thank you, everyone, for sending me your emails. Your reviews mean the world to me. Please, if this has meant something to you, if you have a few takeaways from this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend, paying it forward, especially if you know anyone who is young, in their teens, in their 20s. These are the questions that we want to be assisting those younger generations to be asking from the get-go, out the gate. So please pass this on. If you have a mom friend who has teenagers or young adult children, please consider passing this on. If you have any takeaways, please consider leaving a review. It really is doing so much. Our podcast, you thrivers, as I call you, are really making an impact. Who knew? We're on the fastest growing podcast list, which is incredible to me. And we're coming on our 1-year anniversary of Permission to Thrive. I had no idea when I started what I was doing or how this would catch on, how I would like doing it. So much of this I could never in a million years have expected, had imagined. It is so far beyond what I imagined. It is such a labor of love for me. I love each one of you. You are my thrivers. So give yourself permission to thrive this week, and I will see you next week. Much love, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If there was something in this conversation that spoke to you, we'd so appreciate it if you would take the time to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share this episode with women and mothers you know, because you are here to thrive. See you next time.